everyone. My name is Dr. Crawford. I'm the Associate Medical Director for NAMI, and you are joining us for another part of our Not Alone conversations, in which you're joined by amazing people who are willing to be open and honest about what their mental health journey has been like. I'm so excited to be joined by Danielle Nicolet, who is an amazing actress who's been featured on Third Rock from the Sun, Central Intelligence, the movie with Kevin Hart and The Rock, and now The Flash. And so really happy that she's joining us today. Hi, Danny.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I was hoping that what we could do is just start off with hearing a little bit about what your mental health journey has been like.
Ongoing, I think goes on every day. It I was telling you earlier, I grew up in some unusual circumstances. My mother has her own mental health challenges, and I think um, as a result of her journey to really wrap her head around what was happening inside of her head. Sometimes we ended up in some unstable and unusual circumstances, and um, I ended up developing quite a bit of anxiety as a kid, which I now understand through therapy is an incredibly normal um, development for a kid that grows up in an unstable environment. And so for me, as an adult, the journey has been um, releasing shame that I had as a child about my upbringing. It's been about learning how to process, accept, get a hold of, and communicate with my own anxiety so that it's not operating my life all the time. And ultimately, as someone who has been blessed enough to end up in the public eye, now I feel like I have an additional responsibility to really communicate to others that you don't have to dislike yourself if you have these challenges. We all have them. We just don't all talk about them. And I feel like if I talk about it, for me, maybe someone else will feel comfortable enough to talk about it themselves, or at least acknowledge in their own life that, oh, I have this thing going on. And maybe there's not actually anything wrong with me. It's just something I need to address,
Yeah.
embrace, love, treat.
And absolutely, because there are plenty of people who watch you on TV and think there's absolutely no way that someone who's in the public eye could have a problem like anxiety. But
Mm,
by opening up and sharing with people, yeah, I do, and this is what I experience is a way to normalize this emotional process that people can have when they're feeling overwhelmed, when
mhm.
they come through various situations when they were a kid that might have had a lasting impact on them. Being able to identify as anxiety and share that with the world is really powerful. And I wonder, given that the Flash recently had an episode in which your
Mhm.
character had uh, it explored the character's involvement with some psychiatric symptoms, and I know that was a big part of the story. And I wonder, has that what was that experience like, bringing the mental health component into your work?
For me, it was wonderful and much invited and appreciated. And I work with a showrunner, our boss, Eric Wallace. He's very open and collaborative, and this is a subject matter that he's a Black man, and we have had many conversations leading up to that episode about how, particularly in African American families, we tend to have a real aversion to discussing mental health challenges. And he wanted to really have an opportunity to put that out there and acknowledge it publicly. And I very much wanted to ensure that when my character was talking about her past and the challenges that she had and the treatment that she needed to receive, that the words anxiety and depression were said more than once. Because I feel as though my experience is it's not talked about much in the context of of characters on television. You might see depressive behavior, you might see anxious behavior, you might see um, uh, mental health challenges in general in a character, but you very rarely hear them vocalized for the audience to put together what that means. Hey, I am suffering from depression. This is what depression looks, sounds, and feels like. This is what anxiety looks, sounds, and feels like. It's acting itself out. So obviously I'm on the flash in a rather amplified form. My character has superpowers that makes how she acts out in her anxiety and depression perhaps a little more outrageous, but the essence of the experience was still there. And I felt really proud to be able to play my role in that episode in that context.
Mhm. And that's such a good point because for so many years, mental health conditions has been misrepresented in the media.
Mhm.
And the way in which mental health conditions are portrayed in the media have made it even more difficult for people to want to admit to or recognize or accept the fact that they may have anxiety or depression. And
Mhm.
the fact that you were involved in a character on a big show in which you actually were intentional about naming it, being like, this is anxiety. And
Yeah.
for people to see, my goodness, this character on the show that I really like, that's what it can look like. It doesn't look like all these other images that I've seen over the years and what people have
Mhm.
said to me about what a mental health condition looks like. I mean, that's really powerful, don't you think?
I do. I do, and I think the flip side of that is not only talking about it, but showing that there is a reaching the other side. There is a being okay. And on this particular episode of the show, the lesson, if you will, was that what makes you not okay is not addressing it,
Mm,
is shoving it down, putting a mask on, pretending like it's not there. And the experiences you've been through, the pain, the anxiety, the depression, they're not going to go away because you decided to pretend like they're not there and put on a face for others. But if you acknowledge them, deal with them, use tools to affect them, that you proceed to find your way to happiness, you find your way to a state of peace. And so that was a really important aspect for me too, is the fact that this character is made it to the other side.
mhm,
And it, very emblematic for me in my own life of, always feeling at this point in my life, I'm proud to say I feel as though I am on the other side. It doesn't mean I don't have issues with anxiety. It doesn't mean I don't have to watch my thinking sometimes or acknowledge that I'm being affected or triggered in certain ways and then take self-care measures. But I do feel as though I'm in a place where I'm not controlled by it.
mm,
And so I know that there's another side,
mhm.
and I'm more than happy to live in it.
Yeah, and I think the fact that the show was able to show that other side is important because there are treatments that are out there. And when
Yeah.
people are able to get help, it's amazing how their social lives can improve, their physical health can improve, and their relationships with the world, with their work and everything can also improve. But there's so much that gets in the way of folks wanting to and being willing to actually get some of that help.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear from you, what role do you think stigma plays, especially stigma that you've experienced and in the
Yeah.
Black community? I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that.
If I had to say what the biggest obstacle to um, getting help would be, I think stigma is it. I know for me, um, in my childhood, I remember doing
Hey, Biggie.
sorry, party crasher. Big, can you sit, buddy? Thank you. I remember as a kid doing a lot of lying, doing a
Mm,
lot of pretending because I was really scared that um, the other kids would get a sense of what was really going on in my household. And what was going on in my household is that my mom was not particularly stable at all times. Um, she has her own issues with, uh, I think it would be classified as, and for the record, yes, I have permission from my mother to talk about this. Um, I think it would be classified as an identity disorder. My mother, and she also has her own issues with anxiety and depression. And depression was a big challenge for her when I was a kid. And I remember hiding that a lot and thinking that kids weren't going to like me or they were going to think I was weird. And the and the act of doing that as a little one, I think it ended up kind of growing. It was like an acorn behavior that unaddressed grew into a tree as I got older. And it took me some time in my adult life to come to understand that pretending is not necessary. I am completely okay exactly as I am. There is no shame in coming from an environment where a wonderful adult human who loved me the best that she could was just doing the best that she could. These things were not in her control. They were not in my control as a child. The only thing that's in my control now as an adult is how I choose to process them. And television, movies, it seems like so much of the world really invests in this stigma that um, I'll use the C word, crazy. Nobody wants to be crazy. It's bad to be that. And it's like, first of all, that word is not applicable, nor is it appropriate.
mhm.
And it saddens me that we've lived so long in a society that looks at physical health as something that's different from mental health. Your brain is part of your body, it's health. And no one blames somebody for having for being born with a disability or falling down and breaking their leg and or having a scar from something.
Mhm.
We don't stigmatize that. So
Mm,
we ought not stigmatize what's going on inside people's minds. It's part of our being.
absolutely. And you talked about the shame that you experienced early on and how that's connected to stigma. Because when I think about stigma, I think about the shame that one carries internally, as well as the worries about being treated differently, about
Yeah.
being discriminated against, about not being accepted by their own community. And to have that all come together certainly creates this barrier for people to be open and honest about what they're going through and to also get the help that they need. And I know that especially within the Black community, that's even more challenging because you're already dealing with a lot of discrimination and prejudice about the
Yeah.
color of your skin. It's kind of like a double minority sort of situation, stigma
I
situation.
mean,
Yeah.
you basically were describing the Black experience period, without approaching the mental health challenges. That if I listen, I'm no scientist, but if I were to lay a guess, I would say 9 out of 10 houses in my neighborhood and every other neighborhood has someone who lives in it that has a challenge somewhere on the scale.
Mhm,
And yeah, it's like a double down as a minority. It's
mhm,
our we you already don't blend, so to
mhm,
speak.
mhm,
And then when you couple that with, "Oh, I'm carrying this shame luggage," it's like, okay, now you have it twice as hard, so you avoid dealing with it twice as much, and there's no good that's gonna come of that.
No, because if you already have that worry and that burden that you're carrying on your two shoulders, and you have the depression and anxiety on top of the experience of being Black, you can see why is that people from our community may have poor outcomes with that because
Yeah,
of the trauma, the racism that they've been experiencing, in addition to the
yeah,
weight of the mental health condition that they have.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think beyond, the same goes for the Latino community, and I think there's, also a very solid
Yeah.
element of that with women,
Mhm.
period. We have a societal history of dismissing women's feelings, calling them hysterical, not acknowledging that a problem is a problem. And we as women, particularly women of color, I believe we're raised in a world that we also come to accept being dismissed when it comes to our feelings, perhaps more readily than if we weren't women of color. And I don't know, it's funny. I'm sure that every single group you could say, well, men are raised don't express your feelings, don't cry, all of that. Ultimately, we put it all in and it all comes down to the same conclusion, which is we're all not very good at taking care of ourselves.
No, no,
And we need to do way better.
way better. And that really means that everyone in society needs to do a better job. Because, like you said, all these different groups, gender groups, culture and ethnic groups, they all have their own things that have been placed upon them by society that makes it difficult for them to be vulnerable about what it is that they're going through because there are all these expectations that society has placed on these groups. And it makes
Yeah.
it hard to break free of that because you don't want to stand out and to not be accepted by your community. So it is incredibly hard. And so I wonder for people that you know, that you're close with, who you see they're having some difficulty, how do you even start to have that conversation with them to support them?
This is how I do it. I generally open myself up first to let them know that I'm willing to be vulnerable to them. And I find that that is something, and admittedly, I wouldn't describe myself as someone who gets close to people very easily. However, when I want closeness, when I really want to take responsibility my side of developing a friendship, I allow myself to be open, and I find that that opens the door for them to know that I'm a safe place to talk about stuff that's real. I'm a safe place to be real. And I read a quote, was reading something yesterday, and the author said, I'm going to misquote him, but the essence of it was being vulnerable is terrifying in the moment. But if
Mm,
you put yourself through it, it will pay tenfold in amplifying your actual strengths.
mm,
And I thought, well, my husband came home from work and he was feeling anxious about reaching out to someone that he wants to work with. And I read him that quote and I was like, you get on that phone right now and be vulnerable, open yourself,
Mhm.
make yourself available. And within 5 minutes, that person got back to him and said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I would love to talk to you.
Mm.
I think vulnerability is such a strength. It's it's an opener of doors in others as well. So yeah, for me, if I can tell that someone that I care about or that is in the experience is having a hard time, sometimes it's as simple as me saying to them, you know, I was having a really anxious day yesterday and I had to like go for a walk and meditate and do a few things in order to make myself feel better. How are you doing? Are you good? Do you ever have that happen?
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely. And that's something that really resonates with me because, especially now that people are out and about more because of some of the social distancing restrictions being lifted and being around other people and having conversations in person with folks again. And commonly, people ask the question, how are you doing? How are things going? And we're so used to just saying, oh, I'm fine, everything is okay. But I think
Hmm.
your point about being vulnerable, about being really honest about how you're actually doing can go a long way. Because, like what your husband experienced, having that anxiety about that phone call
Yeah.
and sharing it with the person, rather than carrying that inside for days and days and days, you could just squash it by opening up and really sharing with people how you're feeling. And that is one way to protect our emotional health, our mental health, but it's a practice that's hard to do each and every day.
And I think practice being the key word. I think the more you do it, the easier it becomes. But in the beginning, it feels rather overwhelming. And if you are processing your own anxiety, right, your own depression, and then you get this advice, well, be vulnerable. Well, that's how to do it. I know for myself, well, it's real easy to like spin me into a little more anxiety. And I'll just, I call it being on the sit and spin. Remember that toy when you were a kid? So
Yeah.
I can hop on the sit and spin really easily. And I had a therapist years ago and she would always say to me, move your feet, your mind will follow, move your feet, your mind will follow. And so I think about that and I go, okay, just do the thing. Just do the thing that I know that you're supposed to do. And then everything really will be okay. And it always is. It
Yeah.
always is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I get that. It can be a challenge in the beginning, but like anything else, once you do it and you have a positive result, it gets easier to do it the next time and the next time and the next time.
Yeah.
And most importantly, you've ex- I find acknowledging my anxiety and allowing myself to be vulnerable in the moment significantly alleviates my anxiety. It's amazing how amplified it is when it's all alone inside my head. But when it comes out of my mouth, it's a big world for it to all spread out to and dissipate.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Because the way that I think about anxiety, it's like thinking about ocean waves. There are those ups and downs. But when you see the waves coming towards you, you think there's absolutely no way that I can get through this. But then you do, and you get to the other side. And
Hmm.
you look back and you're like, okay, that wave has passed. I guess I could do this again. And so just leaning into the wave, knowing that that wave of anxiety will actually pass, and to know that each and every time that it is possible to get through the other side, then hopefully the frequency in which those waves are hitting you and the amount of time that you're going through the waves, hopefully it will go down as you just continue to ride through it. But it is so
That's a
hard
really great
to do that.
picture. It
Yeah.
is. That's a really beautiful visual, the idea of it as a wave, because waves pass. They ebb and they flow. The
Mhm.
ocean gets tumultuous, then it gets placid. That's a really great visual. I'm gonna hang on to that one. But yeah, it is. It's challenging to get into a pattern and a place. And if you dance with depression, I always think of it as a dance,
Mhm.
because most of us aren't always in depression. But for those of us that have a propensity for it, I feel like sometimes it feels like that boy on the other side of the dance floor that's like waiting to come and ask me to dance. And I'm like, no, I came here with somebody else.
Mhm.
Um, but if it's something that you have to kind of keep at bay, sometimes when you're having a rough day, it can feel much closer than when you're having a better day. And yeah, the idea that it's a wave,
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
will pass.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
is, it is okay.
And it's okay. And so I wonder for you, what sort of strategies or coping strategies that you use to get through those waves and bouts of anxiety and sadness?
I have a therapist, which is a privilege, and I'm incredibly grateful for. And beyond that, I have learned over the years everything from when my head is wilding out with anxious thoughts, to write them down, get them outside of my head and onto something else. Um, I go for long walks. I meditate daily. As you all have seen, I have a dog who
Yeah.
is, I find to be very, um, uh, he is full of joy, and his joy and my ability to i- interact with him, play with him, and make him happy, and he makes me happy. I feel like it kind of elevates my vibration a bit.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's like the basic stuff that it's kind of not doing as opposed to doing in the land of self-care, like don't eat poorly, eat well, try to treasure my body enough to feed it nutritious foods, sleep, things that seem so basic but can really feel like a challenge when you're in a depressive or anxious space. um yeah, so those are kind of my like basic go-tos. If I wake up in the morning, or if I'm having a rough series of days, I automatically go to, okay, what can we do to help ourselves? We are going to choose the right food. If the choice is between, you know healthy and unhealthy, we're going to choose healthy. I know you don't want to go to bed, go to bed. I know you don't want to meditate, meditate. I know you don't want to move, just walk the dog. Just
Mhm.
walk the dog a little longer than you'll want to. And those things, from what I've been told, kind of can help with the chemical balance of your brain, and like bring your, is it serotonin levels up?
That's right.
Is
Look at
that
you. Look at you, Dr. Dan. I love
it?
it. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, so those are my main go-tos. And I wish for everyone the ability to have a therapist. I really do. I wish, I hope, if I can advocate for in any way, that having therapy available to you, I feel like should be as basic as having a general practitioner available to you.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you anymore. And, you know, you bring up such a good point about the basics, about keeping the basic things in mind, about how you're eating, about sleep. But you're right, it can be so hard to lose track of those things. And so to have a support system in place, someone who could say to you, hey, I noticed that, you haven't gotten out of bed in the last day or so, or I noticed that you haven't showered, or what are you eating?
Mhm.
I'm concerned about you. If we can also feel a little bit more comfortable having those conversations with our loved ones when we are concerned about something that might be going on, could really go a long way. And the point about, go ahead. Mhm.
I will say, you just reminded me of something. We've done it for so long, I had not even thought about it. But uh in terms of what I do when I'm in a really bad way, first of all, my husband and all of my loved ones are well aware that this is a challenge that I deal with. And so I am very clear. My husband is a safe space for me. All I have to say is, I'm having a really anxious day. I'm feeling anxious today. And he stops what he's doing, sits down and says, "Tell me why. What's going on?" And usually it's a 10-minute conversation and he
Mhm.
can't fix anything. Doesn't matter. But
Right.
that's the get it out of my brain and out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I have a lovely group of friends, and uh, we all have our issues. And years ago, we created a code word. I call when you're super depressed and super anxious and you can't leave the house and you don't want to talk to anybody and you don't answer the phone and you just, want to escape underneath a mountain of, like Netflix and Candy Crush. Um, I call it being under the sofa.
Ooh.
And so my girlfriends and I years ago created a code word that if we text that code word to each other, we know that means I'm under the sofa. I'm in a bad way and I can't even handle picking up the phone. I don't want to talk. I don't want to do anything. I'm under the sofa. And we see that word for each other, and one of us goes. One of us shows up at the house. One of us sends some Postmates food. One of us says, "I'm calling and I'm leaving a message and you don't have to pick it up, but here's what I'm saying. And I just listened to the voicemail." We have like an SOS, and knowing that that we all have that within each other is, it's so funny. I didn't even think of it when you first asked me because I've had it for so long. I take it for granted. I think I ought not do that. But it, it's really meaningful to me to know that I can text Stacy this one word and she knows that means, all right, Danny's having a real rough time. Let me see what I can do to support.
Mhm, mhm. And it's so great that you shared that because it is something that we often do take for granted, our friends and our family. And for a lot of people, it's hard to have those conversations about the code word, about the safety word, and to be able to put words to what it is that you're going through when you have these moments so that other people can recognize it. And what a precious gift that you have that you've been able to come up with this support system around you and this clear plan on how to support you when you're under the couch. Um,
Hmm.
and to know that that's in place is so brilliant because just having that support of family and friends is powerful. And that's what we hope to do at NAMI is to let people know that they're not alone, that there's connections here through peer support groups, through our groups that are supporting family members and loved ones. Just having that safety net underneath
Hmm.
you will make you feel reassured that even at the toughest times, when you're at your lowest lows, that at least there's someone that's holding you up so that you're not hitting the bottom.
Hmm.
So I'm really happy you shared that with us. Um, I just have to say, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I really enjoyed this
Same.
conversation. But I was wondering before we wrap up, anything that you want to make sure to say to our audience and people who are listening when it comes to mental health? Any parting words that you have?
Um, to quote the amazing Naomi Osaka, it is okay to not be okay.
Hmm.
And you are normal. You are in a very non-exclusive club of lots and lots and lots of people who, no matter what you think is you are suffering with, no, you are in a group that what you have is what you have going on, no matter what it is, it's normal. There are loads of other people that have the exact same challenges that you do. And there is hope and light and possibility, and you can be whoever you want to be. This stuff does not have to define you. It's just stuff. And like anything else, we learn how to deal with it. Mechanics know how to fix cars. If your car breaks, you don't throw it away. You don't drive it broken forever. You take it to a mechanic. It's just stuff. Some of us just have some stuff we need to deal with in different ways.
Mhm.
And most importantly, for young people, I really want to say to them, like, put down the extra weight. You're so okay. You do not need to carry shame with you. You do not need to carry fear of others' opinions. You do not need to carry the opinions of your family. You are okay exactly as you are.
Absolutely. Powerful words, and you're not alone in this.
Nope.
You're not alone in carrying this stuff, like you said. So thank you so much. And please, everyone, make sure to check out NAMI, our website. We have incredible resources available to make it such that you're not alone in this. So
Yeah,
thank
I'm
you.
gonna go follow you guys right now, actually, on Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Please do. So
Yeah.
NAMI Communicate.
NAMI Communicate.
Yes. And on
On it.
Twitter too.
Following you right now. Yeah,
Yay. Thank you so much.
it's my pleasure.